We will begin this afternoon session with a brief introduction. Welcome to the Canadian Institute of Forestry's National Electronic Lecture Program. My name is Sharon Young, and I'll be hosting today's session. Today is Thursday, November 6, 2025, and this is the first session in the e-lecture series entitled Urban Expansion and Urban Forests Under Pressure, involving priorities and pathways. The series is brought to you by Tree Canada. The CIF-IFC is very pleased to collaborate with Dr. Gina Bardakjian and the team at Tree Canada to host these webinars. Today's webinar is titled Rapid Canopy Development Through Urban Restoration Plantings in a Changing Climate, Lessons from Charlottetown's Post-Hurricane Fiona Recovery. A special reminder that the ISA-certified arborists are eligible to receive one continuing education unit for this webinar. Please email electures@cififc.org with your full name and ISA-certified ID in order to obtain the ISA continuing education unit. Once we verify your attendance, we'll send your information to ISA for them to process. Today we have Kaylee Hutt-Taylor, Coordinator of Research and Engagement from Tree Canada, to introduce our e-lecture speaker. With that, I will now pass it over to Kaylee.
Thanks, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for taking the time to join us today for the first e-lecture session in this series. On behalf of Tree Canada, we're pleased to be bringing together urban forest professionals to explore emerging research and strategies for urban forest canopy protection, restoration, and recovery in the context of urban growth. I also want to thank Sharon for her coordination and to the CIF for their continued partnership with us on these e-lecture series. I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker today, Simon Wilmot. Simon is the Forest and Environmental Officer for the City of Charlottetown, where he leads the urban forestry team. With experience in invasive species management, watershed restoration, and municipal sustainability, he focuses on urban forest recovery, ecological restoration, and advancing nature-based climate adaptation strategies for Charlottetown. Thank you, Simon, again for sharing your time and insights with us today. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you to the CIF and Tree Canada for inviting me. So today's lecture, I'm going to talk a little bit about our efforts. Our efforts to recover from post-tropical storm Fiona in particular. And I'm going to go through one particular approach in detail, but we have approached this in a number of different ways. And there'll be an opportunity at the end to ask any questions. So I've just put up a brief outline of what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to start with a little bit of detail about post-tropical storm Fiona and Charlottetown, scaling our restoration efforts, considerations for our restoration approaches, our new approaches, and go over a little bit of detail about our 2025 projects. So for those of you who don't know, PEI is just, we're on the east coast of Canada, lodged between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. We have a rapidly increasing population, and our urban forest is definitely under pressure from that development as well as storms. We've increased from 36,094 to 38,000 in just a few years. So a rate of 7.5% increase from 2016 to 2021. Just a little history about Charlottetown. So Charlottetown was once a forested area when European settlement happened. There was extensive clearing for agriculture and shipbuilding. By 1900, most forests had been converted to farmland and settlements in the area. Charlottetown's expanded from a small colonial town to the island's main urban center, concentrated, and much of that growth has happened on agricultural land, often abandoned and then developed. So post-tropical storm Fiona was the catalyst for much of what I was talking about today. It was a natural disaster on a scale not previously witnessed on PEI. On September 24th, 2022, Fiona made landfall with a record low atmospheric pressure. It lasted about 12 hours with peak wind speeds reaching 150 kilometers per hour and between 60 millimeters and 170 millimeters of rain. Fiona was the most expensive extreme weather event ever recorded in Atlantic Canada and 7th in Canadian history. It's hard to put into words the scale of this disaster. Images like this won't do it justice. It was truly apocalyptic after the event. A high percentage of the island was without power for a couple of weeks, and the devastation to our infrastructure was incredible. So our urban forest took a big hit as a result of Fiona. We went from urban canopy cover from 20.9% down to 17.6% overnight. So that's a loss of 150 hectares of canopy cover in just 12 hours. The image on the left you can see was produced by Dugan Ecology. They're consultants that we brought in to help us develop a post-Fiona strategy for recovery. And you can see there the red representing where we lost trees and the green representing post-Fiona canopy before Fiona happened. Based on GIS level analysis, we looked at what the canopy that we lost, and we extrapolated that we lost 12,600 mature trees that evening, which obviously is a very significant loss for us. Much of our tree coverage should be in parks. Our parks didn't do too badly compared to the city as a whole, losing going from 38.8% to 33.6% canopy cover. But as a result of our analysis of this, one thing that we were able to see is that much of our parks didn't have very high canopy cover to start with. Many had less than 10%. So that gave us a kind of a starting point for us to start to think about how we might restore our canopy. This is really important on PEI because much of our land is privately owned, and therefore our restoration efforts need to be focused on municipal land, which is a relatively small percentage of the total. So here we can see one of our parks, Upton Park, that was devastated by Fiona. On the left-hand side, you can see the pre-Fiona image. On the right-hand side, you can see the same area post-Fiona with significant canopy gone. The remaining spruce trees that you can see in this image have also started to decline as a result of the spruce bark beetle. This insect has been known to increase after landscape scale stresses such as drought or extreme wind. Given their 2-year life cycle, that's where we would expect to see them now. So Fiona winds not only toppled trees, but they also stressed out much of them, therefore attracting the beetle. And that has been quite terminal for a lot of our spruce trees. So a big question is how many trees do we need to plant to replace 12,600 trees? Obviously, if we were to wait 50 years, we could plant 12,600 trees and we'd get those ecosystem services benefits back to the previous level. However, I'm impatient and we want to get those ecosystem services back as quickly as possible. So we posed the question to Dugan and Associates, how long would it take, how many trees would it take to be planted to grow our forest back within just 10 years, so a decade, which is still a reasonable amount of time. So they did some extrapolation for us and did some equations and the hard math, and they came back with these numbers. Approximately 84,000 trees would have to be replanted. We would have to be planting approximately 11,120 trees a year for 5 years. Now, bear in mind that the Charlottetown Urban Forestry team is a small department, and previously we would be planting about 1,000 trees a year. So this involves almost a tenfold increase. Now, not all of those trees need to be planted by Charlottetown. The urban forest is a shared responsibility between, obviously, the municipal government, private landowners, institutions, all of the people that own land in the municipal area. However, the municipality would take on the largest share of that. So we set ourselves a aspirational goal of approximately 8,000 a year to be planted by the city for the first 5 years. And so far, I have to say we've given it our best shot, but we're not quite at that level yet. And then for the 6 to 10 years, we'd go down to just 5,700 trees, which is still significantly more than we were previously planting. So this gives you an idea of the scale of the problem and why we need to think about approaches to rapid canopy development. So in order to do this, it's not just a simple case of numbers. We had to think about where we would plant those trees. So we had to set ourselves goals and try and think about areas and sort of where we would start. And our focus really has been the low-hanging fruit currently, which is to enhance canopy cover in all of our parks to 30%, and to improve canopy cover in our downed wooded areas. So those are our woodlands that lost a lot of trees. Then we have goals to increase our riparian areas because of their productivity and importance in maintaining water quality and aquatic habitat. We also want to look at our trail system. We have the Confederation Trail running through the city, which is a great system for creating an ecological corridor. And then we have targets within our individual wards that help us look at the distribution of trees relative to where people live. So we have the numbers. So we know roughly how many trees we need to plant, but we needed to start to think about a little bit more than just the numbers. We had to think about what we were going to plant, where we were going to plant, and how we were going to plant. And the background of this slide will probably give you a good idea of one of the key areas that we were thinking about. So climate change is a thing. It's happening. So climate change is not only part of the reason why we want canopy development for all those ecosystem services to help combat heat island effects, to provide that shade, to support the health and of our residents, but it's also a key consideration for how we approach restoring our canopy. To be blunt, there's no point making decisions based on historic temperature norms for us. PI is going to experience hotter, wetter, and wilder weather, and none of that is going to be good. We're experiencing more days over 30 degrees, more heat waves, increased mean temperatures, less snow and ice, and we've just come out of a historic drought. And we anticipate receiving an increasing proportion of our rainfall in extreme weather events. We're currently still planting in November, which wasn't entirely planned, and I'm confident those trees and shrubs will do okay because it hasn't really got that cold yet. So part of our approach has been to look at climate analogs, locations where the weather more closely reflects our future climate conditions, and understand what grows well there. Our closest analog, the one we tend to look at the most, is Stamford in Connecticut. And if you're looking at the map on the bottom left-hand corner of our slide, you can see Charlottetown there in the blue X, and Stamford is on their coast with that red X. You can see it's quite far south for where we are. So that's the weather we're looking at for the future. Now that's really important for us because a lot of our most dominant species on PEI are boreal in nature. This is largely due to disturbance, the fact that we've cleared forest and we've had agriculture, and those agricultural fields have recovered with species that can cope with the harsh exposed conditions. So when we think about the boreal species, here I've thrown up some of the natural ranges of some of the most common species we have. You can see that they're more northerly species, and our weather is getting warmer and more similar to what we're reading in the south. So that's a bit of a highlight for kind of what we're considering when we're thinking about the species selection. And we have my favorite meme on the right-hand side for how we feel about this. It's all going to be pine. So Prince Edward Island's forest is in the Wabanaki Acadian forest range, which is actually a quite a large, diverse forest range. And you can see here, it goes from all the way up in Prince Edward Island, all the way up in northern New Brunswick, down to Connecticut. So remember, in Stamford, Connecticut is our climate analog that is advantageous to us. So with ongoing climate change, this ecological transition line is moving northwards. These shifts are so the changing climate is currently creating pressures on the island ecosystem not seen in recorded history, underscoring the need for adaptive climate resilient management areas. So it's important to understand that prior to European settlement, PEI was 98% forested. So it was a dark, humid place where we're rich in northern hardwood species such as American beech and yellow birch and sugar maple, red oak. We also had white pine and eastern hemlocks would have been dominant species, and ironwoods. Then we had this period of clearing for the island, and now we have this period of heating as well. So things are things are changing. Things have changed from their native context, and things continue to change. So when we're thinking about how we're going to restore the forest, we're really looking at how we can use species that do well in the southern edge of the Wabanaki Acadian region, how they might do well here. So on the screen, I've got listed a few examples of species that we've been experimenting with the last few years to see how they do. The ones that are black, we've seen do quite well. So eastern red cedar, tulip, and white oak and swamp white oak. Black talipo and hackberry, we are starting to plant, but we haven't seen. The jury's still out on those ones, and we're trying some hickory this year. So with the increase in storms, it's important for us to think about storm resiliency in our forest restoration efforts as well. So Fiona gave us a very clear lesson in what trees do not do well in storms. Obviously, the biggest factor of affecting whether a tree fails is often the geography. It's the location. It's whether it's exposed. It's how the winds blow. How they vary from its normal living conditions. But there were some definite trends. In particular, red pine failing and snapping in the middle, as you can see on the right-hand side here, white spruce, trembling aspen, poplar species, and really kind of failing with their shallow root plates. We had a lot of American beech fail, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in a little bit, and white birch. And this is largely what we would have expected. Research has shown that spruce and balsam fir are highly susceptible to wind throw because of their crowns. They're dense and inflexible to wind. And the way that they create drag. And Norway maples, we would expect to not do so well in these high winds because of their branching structure as well. In fact, research indicates that forests that are more resilient are typically those mixed forests. So those forests with a variety of different species and hardwood and softwood species growing. So a key consideration for rapid canopy development is creating a forest that is more storm resilient, and certainly does not feature the monocultures of spruce or red pine. Invasive species are a big consideration as well. Unfortunately, this slide is a lot because we have a lot of challenges with invasive species. I mentioned that American beech did not do well in Fiona, and a big part of that reason is because beech bark disease. So, as you probably are aware, this is a fungal infection that causes trees to die over a period, but it weakens their trunk through their cankers. So, perhaps unsurprisingly, when exposed to the high winds, those trunks often failed, and we lost a lot of beech. Unfortunately, at the same time, we are also being affected by beech leaf mining weevil. This is a species that was introduced, it arrived in Nova Scotia. I think it was about 15 years ago or so. They feed on their beech leaves, and as a result, they basically will kill it over about 10 years. Obviously, like most people, we're worried a little bit about oak wilt. While that's not present on PEI and is under control in southern Ontario, we do get a large percentage of our trees bought to PEI, both in garden centres and for municipal planting from Ontario. So there's always a worry that oak wilt could come to PEI, and this vascular disease is again particularly terminal for red oaks and disrupting the circulatory system. We have Japanese beetles in large numbers in Charlottetown. These defoliate trees by feeding on their leaves, and while not directly terminal, they do weaken and stress those trees. We've had confirmed butternut canker disease now as well. Emerald ash borer is on our doorstep in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and the city was hit hard. The city and the province was hit hard with Dutch elm disease as well recently. So there's a lot of things that we need to kind of consider when we are choosing species for planting. We also have invasive plant species as well. So when we're thinking about natural area regeneration, the failures or slow establishment on former crop fields are often due to the degraded and compacted soils, where native species sometimes might struggle, as they would be. They're more suited to perhaps the more richer soils of the historical past of PEI. But pioneer species and invasive species often do very well in these conditions. So Charlottetown has a significant problem with invasive species and exotic species, so much so that the Atlantic Canada Conservation Data Centre recently stated in one of its sorry, that was a funny beep. Recently stated in a report when it was looking at a site assessment for us that the site had, and I quote, the highest total of exotic plant species ever recorded for a small site in 25 years of ACCDC fieldwork. So that's not a something you want to be known for. Several woody invasive species really kind of impact us. Three in particular are buckthorn, which I'm sure many of you have experience with, and Norway maple, and bittersweet nightshade. We have really significant problems with these ones taking over. We also have multiflora rose as well. It's quite problematic. So we have many natural areas that become overwhelmed with these species, particularly following Fiona. As you can imagine, the removal of the canopy in areas has provided sunlight to their seed bank and allowed particularly the buckthorn to really take off in wooded areas. We have limited stewardship staff, so creating any new naturalized areas require us thinking about protocols that will limit the capacity of these invasive species to become established. This rather beautiful picture was put up by one of our by a child in one of our events, and I think it's a very good point for us to consider, and really is part of the catalyst for us needing the rapid development, because trees don't grow overnight. So we need to think of ways to restore our forest. I should highlight at this point that we are a very small team, the Charlottetown Urban Forestry team, small but mighty. We have 4 full-time staff with responsibility for street and park trees, maintenance, natural area stewardship, education, invasive species management, reviewing planning that impacts relating to environmental impacts. So we're a busy team. So working with Dugan and Associates, we really started to look at some new approaches to how we might restore our canopy following the devastation of Fiona. And some of the biggest one of the biggest takeaways was the idea of us planting in modules, and those modules come in a number of different approaches. Here you can see some examples of how we might plant modules with existing trees, with in small areas or in larger spots. And then you have in the bottom right-hand corner a picture of the Miyawaki approach to afforestation. And you probably have heard of this one because it's been quite popular in the media. So, and here you can see it's reaching everywhere from the BBC to the CBC to the New York Times and everywhere in between. So you've probably heard of it, but I'll go over a little bit of background for this because it kind of was it really helped us start to think about how we're going to approach this problem PEI. So the Miyawaki method its origins are from the 1960s and 70s, developed by the Japanese botanist Dr. Miyawaki. Developed a method based on the potential natural vegetation for an area. So that's identifying the climax forest community that would naturally occur in a site if left undisturbed. It was implemented early in Japan, applied initially to industrial and coastal sites to rapidly restore forest cover. The key, so I'm going to go over the key principles in just one second, but it's had a global reach recently, in part due to a TED talk. One second, sorry, hang on. 1 second, technical problem. Sorry about that. That was what that beeping was. So the TED talk, I think it was 2009, really kind of increased the reach of this. It's now become popular all over the world. The tiny forest movement has been adapted for different urban contexts, sometimes called tiny forests or mini forests. It's been used extensively in Europe, with thousands of mini forests being created across Europe. So here is a slide of a heck of a lot of text for sure, which always advised not to do, but I couldn't think of a better way to do this. But I'll try and go through this as easily as we can. So here I've tried to identify what the Miyawaki method principles are and their benefits. So as I mentioned before, it involves looking at what the potential natural vegetation of a given area would be. The benefits of that being to ensure that restoration replicates the native climax community, prevents the use of exotic or ecologically mismatched species, and produces site-specific designs. Encourages the use of native species and high diversity. Encourages planting not just canopy, but also sub-canopy, shrubs and herbaceous species at their same times. trying to the benefit of that being to recreate a natural forest structure and successional pathways, encourages rich biodiversity and supports mutualistic relationships between plants and fungi in the soil, enhances resilience to pests, droughts, and wind. Here's the bit that people often gasp at, is planting at high density. So under the original approach, it was common to plant between 2 and 5 saplings in 1 square meter. Now that includes not just canopy species, that's also the shrubs and their subcanopy and herbaceous species. It also emphasized not planting in rows and definitely not planting any areas of monoculture. So this is trying to mimic natural forest regeneration, promotes positive competition, leading to early canopy closure, which supports weed suppression and self-thinning. And one of the biggest things for this really was these can be easily planted by their community, because they bring people together to one place to plant lots, and then people can really see the growth of their planting. Sorry. It also involved the amending of or rebuilding of topsoil, because we're building, doing these typically in areas that have been previously used for previously developed or previous agricultural use. So the soil is often depleted or compacted. So rebuilding that topsoil to replicate the natural humus formation with additional organic material, the use of mulch to improve the soil structure, moisture, and nutrients. So this accelerates the microbial activity, nutrient cycle, and biological activity and fertility of the soils, improves the moisture retention and aeration for roots, and reduces transplant stress and mortality. And then the last part is providing intensive early support. So that's where we do some weeding and watering in particular, and then we back off. So that's the principles and benefits of the Miyawaki method that was originally created. We have modified these to meet our needs, and I'm going to talk you through these, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time going over why we have done this, and hopefully I can convince you that it is a good idea. So whereas the original process was looking at what the natural climax species would be for that area, we are using climate modeling to understand species that will thrive in the current and future climate, not the historical climate, while still supporting native wildlife. Here, we're lucky on PI to a certain extent that we don't have species that are endemic to the island. So anything that's living here is probably in Nova Scotia or New Brunswick and all the way down to Maine and below. Those species are probably there as well. So we have a little bit of flexibility there to support some assisted migration. We are the original method required us to use native and lots of species. So we're still planting lots of species. We're using climate resilient species from the region. So that's from the Wabanaki-Acadian region as it stretches down to Canadian, and the continent. We do take some species from the eastern deciduous forest that are modeled to do well as well. We limit planting vulnerable species to current or potential pests or pathogens. So we're not planting so much planting pretty much any butternut now. We're not planting any black or white ash in any of these plantings. We're planting for functional redundancy as well. So red oaks are particularly susceptible to oak wilt, so we are also planting more white oaks as well, particularly swamp white oak, to add that resiliency in case oak wilt comes here and the white oaks do a little bit better. We are ensuring vertical complexity in our little forested modules for maximum productivity. I should note that the pictures that accompany these slides are the work that we've been doing that follows this. So you can see one of our, actually two of our modules in the image above here. So just to continue, Whereas the original method looked at planting saplings in meter square, a number of them, we're planting potted stock ranging from 1 to 10 gallons. So some of those can be quite large, with minimum distances between canopy trees on multiple sides. So whereas we might be pushing the canopy trees up against, well, relatively close to one another. And so on some sides, we try to make sure that we leave a couple of sides free. We try to look at minimum spacing between the canopy trees of 2 to 3 meters with intervening shrubs and herbaceous species. We plant on gradients based on disturbance, sun and wind exposure, and saturation, replicating natural structures. So we put sun-loving shrubs at the edge with higher density plantings and more shade-tolerant, exposure-intolerant in their center. We structure for recreation, taking into account the aesthetics and plant with public interest in mind. It's important that the public support the actions that we are taking. So we want people to be to enjoy these spaces. We also need their support of the public to plant these things as well. So we keep that in mind for the way that we structure them as well. We use wood chips for improved moisture retention, shade, and weed suppressant. We do amend the soil still. We add organic material, and we add clean topsoil as well. We try to offset that nitrogen tie-up from the wood chips deteriorating with that organic material. We also do something a bit different as well. We add large woody debris because we have an awful lot of that left over from Fiona. And that provides moisture to the modules and habitat. We still provide some initial early care, so we accept not everything's going to be done in that first year. We will weed, water, stake, and remulch. We use log borders where we have the money to define the site for grass cutting and remulching and erosion control, because I'm sure everyone's had experience of the heartbreak of trees being run over by overzealous mowing. We accept that some thinning might have to happen. We might even have to engage in some crop release at some point, or transplanting. And we know that some species will die, but that's okay. We're trying to build a living ecosystem, not forest products. So we really we're okay with some failure. So I'm just going to run through a few pictures of sites to give you an idea of how this works. So you can see here community plantings and how they look as they're happening. We always lay out their pots so that people can see. So things are planted in the appropriate places, and we don't end up with a lot of canopy trees all right next to each other and all the shrubs in another spot. So this is 1 year. So this is 1 year later from their top left and the bottom left pictures. This is 1 year later. So you can see their dense growth, and things are doing very, very well. Here's our primary workforce. Not an insignificant amount of our trees are planted by school children. So that's 2024, and that's this year. You can see that site's doing very well as well. So some of the benefits of planting their large potted stock is they often exhibit greater initial survival and heightened diameter growth over because they have that stored resources. We can expect canopy closure being accelerated, giving us that all-important shade and litter production, stabilizing the microclimate, supporting faster habitat development. The improved root mass and carbohydrate reserves enhance resiliency under drought and compacted soil conditions. And we've really noticed that this year when we've had this epic drought, that our mini forest modules have done very, very, very well. They haven't suffered. They have an immediate structural and aesthetic value. People can see what you're doing very quickly, which is important, particularly for an area where people really like to see, they often regard that mowed grass as being very organized and neat. So having these larger trees in place give people an immediate idea of what we're doing. And it reduces the short-term maintenance to a certain extent. Some of the drawbacks, though, it's expensive. We're able to do this because we've got a lot of funding from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and various other groups. We have there is a risk of root defects, in particular circling roots, the real problem, particularly for things like red maple. We can sometimes those roots will stay in that spot where it's planted. They won't spread out. Sometimes it can be challenging protecting against some of the pests that we have as well. And there's issues with limited genetic diversity. Obviously, if we're getting big trees, we have to go out to the big nurseries, and there's often limited genetic diversity in those. So there are drawbacks for sure. In order to manage the invasive species, we are engaging in a lot of fern planting. I'm trying to plant as many ferns as I can because they can help that dense fern cover provides that continuous low canopy and thick litter that reduces light at their surface, that really helps stop some of those woody invasive species from getting started, in particular buckthorn. There's obviously a trade-off there that we have to think about, the fact that we will have to engage in active stewardship, that might mean that natural regeneration of tree species might be harder. But in a municipal area, in parks, this is something I think we can manage for sure. We're also engaging in high-density shrub planting to help manage those invasive species as well. So that, again, we're establishing we're reducing the buckthorn seedling survival through shading and competition for resources. It prevents reinvasion and it helps restore that ecological function by taking out by using those niches for the plants that are desirable. So I'm just going to go over a few areas where we've been planting this year as my time runs out. So we've had an enormous planting year this year, planting over 5,500 trees, shrubs, and herbaceous plants, largely due to funding from the FCM, from Trees for Life, Tree Canada, and the Trans-Canada Trail programs have been major supporters of us, and the Rotary Club as well. So this area is called Ellen's Creek, and you can see this is before we did our plantings. And thanks to Google's updating satellite images, you can see the large modules that we planted this year. Then this is on the ground, what it looks like. We have a little bit of grass breaking through, but that's to be expected. This is our big one, is Windsor Park. This is what it looked like before, large areas of grass. This is very sloped. You can't see it so well here, but those darker patches of green are where the water runs because of the slope. And so these aren't areas where you could like play soccer or something like that. So we've created modules, and these dots all represent trees, shrubs, ferns in their site. So you can see how we've used these modules to create paths and shape that provide public interest. So natural areas for people to walk through. And you can see the dramatic turnaround on site here. So you've got, this is the site preparation initially, which is the bit that terrifies everyone when they see us tearing up the grass and creating this. People have asked whether we were building houses in these spots. It's so dramatic. Then you can see this is how it evolves and becomes replanted. And this is how it looks like as we go through. And you can see in the back the modules going ahead. It's hard to capture this, anything beyond the aerial. Okay, and that's the presentation over and done with in 40 minutes. Excellent.
Thank you, Simon, for the great presentation. We'll now open the floor for any questions. So the first question we have for Simon is, how do you reflect the dominant tree species in climax ecosystems if you plant an evenly balanced mix of trees at the micro level?
I think that difficult question. I'll try and. So what you're trying to get at here, I think, is that we don't want an even age stand at the end of this, and that is a challenge because obviously we're planting in one go for the most part. We partly get around this by planting not just so we don't just plant 10-gallon trees. We don't just plant 1-gallon trees. We plant the full range. We tend to plant the 1 gallons from from local suppliers that give us access to native seed sources. So we are getting genetic diversity in there. And at the same time, we're importing some of those other species. So like tulip trees, for example, we'll bring in, and we tend to bring them in at a slightly larger size. My preference is when we're planting those larger ones to be in that kind of 5 to 7 gallon kind of range. So they're not filling out that pot entirely, so you're not getting that circling roots too badly. And at the same time, you're getting the size, though, that means that you get that faster canopy closure. Then it's all about ensuring that you have enough shrubs. And that's one of the biggest challenges that really we struggle with, is that most of the funding sources provides money for trees and only a little bit of money for shrubs or herbaceous species. So ideally, we want our canopy trees to be, somewhere between 25 and 30% of our forest modules, and then have sub-canopy and shrubs, and then herbaceous species making up their rest to create a complete ecosystem. However, funding tends to reflect a higher percentage of trees. So we try to bend the definition of what a tree is as much as possible to include as many shrubby trees as we can to try and create that vertical complexity. We really want to have a canopy, a subcanopy, a shrub layer, and a herbaceous level. The challenge is, I think the other part of maybe what you're asking is also that as the canopy closes, so you start off with a lot of sunlight, and then as the canopy closes, you'll have less. So how do you maintain that? So we have to choose species that can cope with both sun conditions and also shade, which is a challenge for sure. And we do lean very heavily on planting a lot of aronia and witch hazel as being good species for doing that, and beaked hazelnut as well where we can.
Thank you, Simon. Just to clarify, we are right now addressing the questions in the chat, and we also have some questions from Q&A pod, and I will try our best to answer every questions. Okay, next question for Simon is, how are you measuring success in tree species mix in the short term?
Success. I wish I had I don't have a complicated answer for that question. I would say that we're measuring success based on survival, number one. Number two, relative growth. So how well they are, how much biomass they're putting on in particular, which we tend to look at whether we're having tip dieback or not on those species. So it's not terribly sophisticated, I suppose. Is it alive or is it dead? Is it growing? Is it growing well or is it not? And then the comparison between those species.
Thank you, Simon. Next question for you is, are you using Fiona debris for the log edges?
Absolutely. Fiona gave us a lot of woody debris. So we're using forest contractors that are typically still doing clear up, and will be for a long time across the province. There's no shortage of wood available. And as I mentioned, we also got the spruce bark beetle right now taking down trees as well. So there's a lot going on in our forest at present.
Okay. Next question. Are the logs staked into the ground or are placed down without staking? Does this limit future expansion of these mini forests?
That's a good question. In some, we do all of both. We use teenagers very extensively for planting. They're an amazing resource for controlling invasive species and doing planting for us. But sometimes they can also have a tendency to move things around that we don't want moved around. So we found it that staking down logs is very desirable to discourage the rearrangement when people are not looking. So we do that, and we also do it because some of the areas we're planting, we are using those logs to retard the flow of water, so that they will stop. It stops it stops the flow of runoff and delays it and lets it kind of absorb more. So we're anchoring them in place for that as well.
Thank you, Simon. Next question is, when and where do you start planting trees so as new arrivals can participate to plant trees?
We Charlottetown, we have part of our development process is that essentially that houses are planted on areas that are subdivided, and as part of that subdivision process, 10% of that land is given to their city for green space, and we get more and more parks created. So we're really kind of using those kind of green spaces that have been created by development. We are trying to catch up on after years of that happening right now. So we post on various on the Charlottetown social media, and we often will post in other places when community events are happening. We had a great couple of community events over at Evergreen Park this year, working with TD and Tree Canada, and we also had another one working with our FCM GCCC project up at Windsor Park this year, and various ones with schools all over the place. Yeah.
Thank you, Simon. Next question for you in the chat. The municipality I work for is following a similar module for forest restoration. We have added fences around the planting area due to deer and small mammals issues. Do you see a need for fences in Charlottetown restoration?
One of the in some ways disadvantage, because I love seeing them, but we don't have deer in Charlottetown or on PEI, and we don't have much in the way of those kind of larger mammals. We do have a terrible problem sometimes with voles in particular. So voles are our nightmare species, despite being so cute and small. They do like to eat our saplings. So we do use tree protection. We have the wraps we place around them, and then we use larger like weeping tile tubing around the larger trees as well to protect them against those. We also have snowshoe hares as well that browse, and particularly on our yellow birch. But that's so we don't have to worry about fencing for those things, but we do have to do tree protection.
Thank you, Simon. Last question in the chat is, does the expense of this system reduce your ability to replant at the high annual rate you seek to achieve?
I wouldn't. I suppose there is a trade-off between the numbers for sure. I would say the trade-off for the numbers is worth it for the buy-in that the public has for doing this. The ability for the public to not only see the site preparation, so the clearing of the sod and the placing the wood chips down gives people a real visual idea that restoration is happening there. But seeing those larger trees and the fact that they can see how in just a few short years they will have a more defined forest area rather than smaller 1-gallon trees growing over a longer period, I think is worth it, because we need that public buy-in to achieve our goals. And to be frank, the loss of Canopy being so dramatic from Fiona, we need that Canopy back at a rate that is much higher. So I think that there are trade-offs for sure. And yes, we could probably plant more numbers, but the staffing requirement to do that and the space that we would need to do it, I think we've hit a kind of happy medium right now. I'd say we do still plant the 1 gallons, but within our stock, but we're also planting 1, 5, 10 gallons all throughout these modules.
Thank you, Simon. Now we move on to the questions from the Q&A pod. So here are a few questions. The first one is, as urban foresters and arborists, did you find it a big stretch in your skill sets to do this afforestation and urban conservation work? Where did you go for information?
That's one of the interesting things about doing this presentation, because the evolution of this idea was not immediate. This isn't something that we just kind of like sat down and brainstormed in an afternoon or something like that. This is a culmination of various ideas, articles, read, things seen, observations from our own plantings, and us really having a great kind of environment in Charlottetown where we were able to, and we were supported to try something different, and then great support from funders. So yeah, there was a moment, and where one of my colleagues and I were standing in a delivery of large trees, where we basically stood there and we looked at each other and we said, what would happen if we just planted these like this in this situation? We'd have like an instant forest, and we kind of like started sort of joking around on the insta forest idea, and that was kind of like part of the germination of this initial approach was there, and the Miyawaki research supported that, and then looking at the work that Dugan and Associates was they're called Dugan Ecology now, was recommending it as well. So it was really kind of putting it all together, like little things we've seen about ferns suppressing woody species. So it was piecing together various sources of information and kind of sewing it together into maybe not a new idea, but an evolution of a series of ideas.
Thank you, Simon. Moving on to the next question. Are you considering park maintenance when placing your modules? The aerial view of Windsor Park looks like you created some difficult mowing situations for the mowing crews, too tight to fit large park mowers through, tight corners that will require trimming afterward.
Yes, and the scale is hard there. There is enough. We did basically create paths that were big enough for mowers to go through, but they would have much rathered if we created square modules. But nature doesn't like squares, and I think from a natural, I think our eyes don't like squares as well when we're looking at these sites. We want to walk on paths that are curved, and so we've given our mowers a challenge, and they may well occasionally curse me for doing such, but I can live with that if the end product is some natural beauty along their way. I didn't get into this line to be popular.
Next question in the Q&A. What operating funding have you requested for these mini forests, and what size team do you have for ongoing maintenance and operations?
I'd say we have 4 full-time staff members. Thanks to funding from the GCCC program from the FCM, we have a 3-year program with them to support additional seasonal staff on top of some seasonal staff that we have. So we have 3 seasonal staff normally, and we added 3 additional seasonal staff to our program for doing this side of the operation. We have other staff doing other parts of so planting large caliper trees on the streets, for example, is a different team that we have working on. But this, so we have 5 seasonal members of staff helping us out with this. We do use contractors a lot for the site preparation. Like, I'm not getting up my team to do the site prep. We use contractors for doing that. We have a great local contractor that we've been using for this, who is has a young business, so is willing to try to do lots of different things, and that's been really advantageous for us.
Thank you, Simon. Next question is, from this experience, do you think our field should shift away from tree number based targets, like your 12K tree goal, to canopy area based targets?
Oh, I would love that. That would be a dream come true. And I think a lot of people recognize this. There's a great article in Nature magazine talking about this a long time ago. We should be, there is a goal for street trees, perhaps, or standalone specimen trees. That's perhaps more of a number-based area. But when we're doing these kind of natural area restorations, the tree number goal blinds us sometimes to the fact of what the site actually needs, and often the site needs far more shrubs and herbaceous plantings than perhaps trees. And so finding funding that supports that notion is difficult. The idea, I think one of the mini forest guides from Holland talks about sort of only something like 15-20% of the planting should be canopy trees. So whereas even our best funding is 85% trees and 15% other. So I really love any funding source that allows us to plant shrubs. There is not enough shrub love in this world, and there are definitely not enough fern fanatics either.
Thank you, Simon. Next question for you is, do you use tilling for your soil amendments?
Sometimes, depending on their budget. So all these different modules come from different budget sources. So if I'm low on money, I'll till it. If I have enough money, I'll have the sod removed, that being preferable. Tilling the grass tends to come back even with a thick layer of mulch relatively quickly. But still better than just putting them in the grass. When I look at sites, even in the same area where we previously just cut holes in grass and planted, compared to the areas where we have tilled or removed the sod entirely, it's stark, their difference. Unfortunately, it's hard to quantify from an academic point of view. It's hard to get there. There are a lot of confounding variables, so there's lots of reasons why it's hard to compare from an academic point of view. But from a visual perspective, you can see, an observational perspective, you can see the difference that preparing the soil really has for these modules.
Thank you, Simon. Just 2 more questions for you to answer. How did you decide on the distance between planting in order to still get the Miyawaki benefits? One of the biggest barriers we see with the original method is a planting density being difficult to achieve and making maintenance harder.
Yeah, all of those things are very real. It's observation, I would say. I'm very privileged to have a little office in a clubhouse in the middle of a big forested park, and to a greater or lesser extent, looking out my window and walking around the forest and just enjoying the forest, and looking at how the spacing between trees that looks right. That seems to be doing well, that seems to be supporting our goals. So we have a little arboretum on the edge, and I literally have I remember early on the idea of just pacing out the difference between the trees and kind of noting it and kind of like, okay, yeah, this worked, this looks about right, and kind of trying to apply that logic, looking at what nature is doing by itself, looking what previous restoration efforts have done that has worked, has all kind of given us this kind of this kind of feel for what their spacing is. Not very empirical evidence based, more observational based. Yeah.
Thank you, Simon. Last question for you is, did you receive suggestions for improvement along with the GCCC funding?
No, they liked what we were doing. It was they seemed to embrace the approach. We worked with some great people over at the GCCC. Elsie's great, and Tree Canada. We have a good relationship with Tree Canada, and we chatted a lot with them during the initial kind of application stages. It was very good. It was a long process, very, very long, but they liked what we were doing, and they kind of believed in our level of crazy and got on board with it. We managed to convince them that it was a good-looking idea, and it seems to be borne out. It really helps to have our GCCC advisor lives in Charlottetown, and so I've taken her out to some of the sites and shown her what we're doing.
Okay, looks like we just got one more question for Simon, and I know this is a very great presentation and very interesting topic. So if anybody has like follow-up questions, we encourage you to reach out to Simon after this after this e-lecture session. All right, I'll read out for you, Simon. What about alder shrubs or other nitrogen fixers?
Oh yeah, we love our bayberry. Bayberry's a good nitrogen fixing species. Um, I'm brutally honest. I occasionally forget about alder because it's often a problem on PEI because it's a species that grows up very densely in disturbed areas. So there's a lot of speckled alder clearing that goes on PEI. So there's still a bit of a mental hurdle for me to get over to think about planting it deliberately rather than having it clearing it to allow other things to grow. But I was kicking myself that I should have planted at a site we just did a month ago, and we'll probably go back and put some in next year. But absolutely, they would be a species that we should add. There's a historical background with PEI and alders that perhaps has meant I haven't naturally gravitated towards it. And I've
Thank you,
overly influenced my team, probably with that.
Thank you, Simon, for answering all the questions. Now I'd like to close this e-lecture session. Thank you all for participating in today's webinar. And once again, a big thank you to Simon for sharing how Charlottetown is using innovative urban forest restoration methods to rapidly rebuild the canopy after Hurricane Fiona. All right. Bye, everyone.